So who was William Shakespeare again? Well known, the Bard was an English author of famous plays about a lot of different things, and he lived during the Elizabethan era. But why is Shakespeare considered such a great artist? Born in England in 1564, he started his career as an actor and playwright as a member of the actors group the Lord Chamberlain's Company, which would later become the King's Company. They played in several theatres until they eventually built the famous Globe Theatre, their very first own stage. As there were only male members in the company, every role had to be played by men. But that wasn't the reason why Shakespeare's plays like Othello or Hamlet were very popular. To match the various tastes of a diverse audience, Shakespeare created texts of high complexity, containing relatively simple plots as well as subtle nuances. Being the key to his success, his stories also contained multiple interlocking plots, twists and confusions, containing something for everyone in the audience. So it wasn't just the common people who enjoyed his works, his company even played at the King's Court for the amusement of the aristocracy. Besides the plays, Shakespeare also wrote a multitude of sonnets and poems. At first, his work consisted almost exclusively of histories and comedies like A Midsummer Night's Dream and Henry VI. Later, tragedies like Hamlet also became part of his portfolio. In his work, Shakespeare used his own special language, rich in metaphors and vivid images. He even created new words which became firmly established. As a consequence, many English words used today, like lonely and gossip, make their first appearance in one of his plays or sonnets. Shakespeare died in 1616 at the age of 52. But his plays are still performed today and amaze audiences. Shakespeare's stories have found their way into many of today's movies, books, and even music. And fortunately, nowadays, women can also play Juliet.
The History of English in 10 minutes. Chapter 3. Shakespeare, or a plaque on both his houses. As the dictionary tells us, about 2,000 new words and phrases were invented by William Shakespeare. He gave us handy words like eyeball, puppy dog and anchovy, and more show-offy words like dauntless, besmirch and lackluster. He came up with the word alligator, soon after he ran out of things to rhyme with crocodile. And a nation of tea drinkers finally took him to their hearts when he invented the hobnob. Shakespeare knew the power of catchphrases as well as biscuits. Without him, we'd never eat our flesh and blood out of house and home. We'd have to say good riddance to the green-eyed monster, and breaking the ice would be as dead as a doornail. If you tried to get your money's worth, you'd be given short shrift, and anyone who laid it on with a trowel could be hoisted with his own petard. Of course, it's possible other people used these words first, but the dictionary writers liked looking them up in Shakespeare because there was more cross-dressing and people poking each other's eyes out. Shakespeare's poetry showed the world that English was a rich, vibrant language with limitless expressive and emotional power, and he still had time to open all those tea rooms in Stratford.
But the man could not write a play. We know this because he penned some court entertainments, and they are sadly static affairs in which stock characters, a hermit, a soldier, a secretary, stand and deliver set pieces about the joys of being a hermit, a soldier, a secretary. There's not a trace here of the grasp of plot, character, nuance, conflict that we expect in Shakespeare's plays. In short, Francis Bacon had no drama.
There are many implausibilities about the idea that Christopher Marlowe wrote the plays of Shakespeare, but over and above these there is one glaring factual objection, which is that Marlowe was stabbed to death in 1593, as evidenced in various documents, including a coroner's report, and that he was therefore actually dead when most of the Shakespeare plays were written. There are many interesting questions to be asked about Marlowe's relationship with Shakespeare, but the question, did he write the plays of Shakespeare, is not one of them.
The Earl of Oxford was involved in the theatre in different capacities, though mainly as a side effect of his stormy political career. Lending your name to a theatre company, and helping to script entertainments for social functions at court could be useful ways of attracting attention. In 1598, Francis Mears reported that Oxford had written comedies himself, in the same list of writers in which he elsewhere praises Shakespeare, but sadly these don't survive. In general, Oxford seems to have been busier feuding and fighting, both against the Spanish and against his political rivals at court.
His death in 1604 occurred much too early for Macbeth, King Lear, Winter's Tale, and The Tempest.
Literacy, the ability to read and write, is nothing more than a function of education. It tells us nothing about a person's intelligence, imagination, or creativity. It tells us only that no one taught that person to make or recognise a symbolic mark to represent a word. But literate or not, Shakespeare's parents were perfectly capable of producing and raising a son who became one of the most gifted writers ever.
Shakespeare was a star, but he was also a team player. He formed temporary partnerships with other professional playwrights to work on specific projects. Elizabethan professions were normally based on an apprenticeship system. So at the beginning of his career, Shakespeare worked with older, more experienced, better educated authors. As he got older, Shakespeare himself became the veteran, teaching his trade to promising younger men.
Our final speaker tonight is a writer, teacher, sometime actor and director, and the creator of the website Nanette's Feast. Please welcome Nan Bauer.
Is this on? Hello, everybody. This is Frank Underwood. He is the anti-hero of the Netflix show House of Cards. He has literal blood on his hands as he, spoiler alert, claws and shreds his way to the highest office in the land. But of course, he's really Richard III, played by the same actor, Kevin Spacey. Richard III is a relatively concise 5-act play by Shakespeare, as opposed to season after season of increasingly tortured writing. Tortured is a word, however, that Shakespeare audiences often use to describe themselves. The received wisdom is that you're supposed to see the play instead of read the play or do them both. But the problem is, Shakespeare done right, like we talked, and actors, speaking as one myself, he terrifies us. We can't get a handle on the language. Sometimes our directors don't help us, and everybody loses that way, and that's so bad, because Shakespeare was not just the greatest writer in the English language, he was one of the most acute observers of human psychology ever, wrote in a time of terrific political and religious conflict, has so much to say to us, and we gotta read him, and here's where we're gonna start, with the rhythm. Iambic pentameter, yay, said no one ever. Iambic, though, it's not so bad. Iambic means 2 syllables, second one gets the emphasis, ba-boom. Pentameter means 5. Now, we speak iambically in English. We say, New York, my lord, and now. So you take 5 of those and you got ba-boom, 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 ba-boom. But soft, what light through yonder window breaks. Shakespeare, very practical guy. He's an actor. They have to learn 5 to 6 roles, keep them in their head really fast. So if something's in rhythm, like a poem or a song or iambic pentameter, it's a lot easier to memorize. It's so natural to us because it's our heartbeat. Ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. Or do it with your feet. Ba-boom, ba-boom. Like a horse cantering along. And it's so natural that when Shakespeare breaks it to show us the psychological shift, you'll feel it. Like when Juliet doesn't say gallop apace, she goes, gallop apace, you fiery-footed steeds. She cannot wait for Romeo to get there. Juliet's most famous line, wherefore art thou, Romeo? Why did Shakespeare have to do that? We don't use you familiar anymore in English. Thou, thee, thy, thine. But it does show us relationship. We'll talk about that in a minute. I want to direct you to a fantastic website, but I can't say the name because it's MC17. Granddaddy of all cuss words. Yeah, Shakespeare. Google that, and you'll find all sorts of fantastic little things that will help you understand the these and thous that I don't have time to explain. Now, that familiar case, which you will be familiar with if you speak Spanish, is used with your friends, your buddies, your sweetheart, but also in Shakespeare's time with servants. So if you got somebody going, you this, you that, thou, ooh, that's a diss. They're saying, you're worse than me, and now we come to even more dissing. My volunteers need to stand up. All right, volunteer number 1, take it away.
You scullion, you rampallion, you fustularian, I'll tickle your catastrophe.
Methinks thou art a general offense, and every man should beat thee.
Take that, internet trolls. Thank you. Where do you start? Not with Hamlet. Start where Shakespeare did. His first play probably was Two Gentlemen of Verona. It's got all the stuff I've been talking about. It's a great story about what it's like to be young and really stupid. And most encouraging for all of us, it has the worst ending ever. For me, as a writer, to know that Shakespeare could kind of suck when he was starting out is so wonderful. It makes me so happy. Then you go to Macbeth, and I'm saying it, Macbeth, 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 nothing happens. Okay, that superstition is stupid. Don't think about Walter White being Macbeth. Cast Bryan Cranston as Macbeth in your own head, the original kind of good guy who broke bad. Francine Prose, one of my favorite writers, said that when people complain that masterpieces make them feel stupid, she said, no, 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 no. Reading genius makes me feel smarter. Or maybe someday I can be smarter. Let's not make Shakespeare come to us through text messages and tweets. Let's go to him, take our A game, get smarter, have a great time doing it, and tell those internet trolls to watch out. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Nan. Thanks, Nan. Well, that's our show for tonight. I just have a couple things to mention. One is, let's hear it for our great speakers. I know it's not easy to get up here with the timing, and it's a tricky thing to do, and we really appreciate them putting themselves out there. Ignite is brought to you by a nonprofit called A2 Geeks. We also present the Ann Arbor Mini Maker Fair, which is an annual do-it-yourself festival in June. You can learn to solder, you can play life-size operation, you can bring that thing that's in your basement you made and show it to people. You should check that out. We can't do this without our great sponsors, so I want to take a moment to thank Workentile, which is a great co-working space on Main Street. If you're an independent or you work at home, it's a great way to get some community. I want to thank Washington Toastmasters for helping out with our run-throughs. They did a great job providing excellent and positive feedback to our speakers, and we really appreciate the work they did with them. I also want to thank Roger Rail for taping and the Zellery Institute for Entrepreneurial Studies for providing this fantastic venue. So let's hear it for all of them. So if you're around later, we can head over to Pizza House for a post party. It's just a couple blocks that way. Easy walk. We're going to be upstairs, I believe, by the bar. Hope to see you there. Thanks. And I think Lucia is still selling the Murray Avenue Times down in the front row for $1. Get that newspaper while it's hot. Thank you.